3 weeks after I saved Princess Veyla from assassins. She was waiting outside my quarters at dawn again, and when I finally demanded to know why she was following me everywhere, she broke down and admitted she could not eat or sleep when I was not nearby, and something had been wrong with her since I saved her life. Reyes groaned as he rolled out of bed. His shoulder throbbed in that dull ache it always did these days, a reminder of his brush with death 3 weeks ago. He grabbed the uniform he slept in and headed to the small bathroom just off his quarters on the Vel'Kari Royal Space Station. It was still dark outside when he emerged, but as usual, Princess Veyla stood by the door. She had been there every morning for 7 days now, ever since she started requesting him specifically instead of rotating security officers. At first, Cole thought it might be a peculiar favor from her to repay his life-saving efforts. But after the 7th day, he realized something was off about how she clung to him like this. "Good morning," Veyla said softly, as she watched him approach. She moved slightly aside to let him in but remained close to the door once inside. Cole sighed and leaned against a wall, his eyes narrowing at her reflection in the small mirror above the sink where he was brushing his teeth. "Princess, why are you here so early every day?" Her expression shifted from calm to hesitant as she bit her lip slightly. It wasn't like Veyla of Vel'Kari to let emotions show through such an obvious action. Cole had seen royal princesses act differently before. This one was clearly out of place in the usual stiff postures he expected. I come here because—" She paused, struggling for words as she fiddled with her silver banded bracelet. "I need you nearby." Cole's eyebrows shot up in surprise. This wasn't what he had expected at all. "What do you mean by need?" Veyla looked down towards the floor before meeting his gaze again nervously. Her normally composed demeanor was nowhere to be seen today. It seemed that even her physical appearance reflected her unease. There were dark circles under her violet eyes, and she appeared far more ragged than usual. "I can't eat properly when you are not near," she whispered, almost too quietly for Cole to hear over his own brushing teeth sounds, but stopping him cold nonetheless. "What?" he said sharply as he finished quickly and turned toward her. His expression was one of shock mixed with something else that Veyla couldn't quite read. Maybe it was a glimmering edge of realization. "I can't sleep," she continued in the same hushed tone. "I cannot focus on anything when you are not close by." Her eyes welled up, as if holding back tears. She swallowed hard against those emotions threatening to spill over into panic and confusion. "It's unbearable." Cole felt an unexpected pang of sympathy, but also a rising sense of dread at what this could mean for both of them. Are you sure there isn't something else going on?" he asked cautiously, not quite able to grasp the extent of her statement just yet. "Like maybe another medical concern?" Her shoulders slumped in resignation as she shook her head slowly from side to side. "No," Veyla answered softly, almost regretfully. Then her gaze lifted back up towards him again, with an intensity that made Cole take a step back involuntarily. "Something has been wrong since you saved my life." Cole stared at her for what felt like an eternity before he could get the words out. "We need to talk to a doctor." His voice was firm yet understanding, though his mind raced trying to comprehend just how deep into this situation they had fallen. Princess Veyla's request was simple yet terrifyingly complex. Cole knew they needed to talk to a doctor, and she agreed without hesitation. As he escorted her through the station's corridors towards the medical wing, tension hung between them like an invisible net. "Your Highness," Cole said after several minutes of silence, breaking their uncomfortable trudge forward, "can you tell me more about what's been happening? Do you have any idea why this reaction started?" Veyla glanced at him briefly before averting her eyes once again. She shook her head softly, but adamantly. "I do not understand it myself," she confessed quietly. The medical wing of the Vel'Kari station was a sleek, white complex designed for efficiency and comfort, but today the sterile environment did little to ease Cole's mounting anxiety. They arrived at Dr. Ilera Novakova's officer room filled with advanced diagnostic equipment and waited outside as Veyla entered alone. Cole tapped his fingers nervously against the wall while pacing back and forth. After what seemed like an eternity, the door finally opened again, but only to let out a lone figure. Dr. Ilera herself asked Cole to step inside now that she had completed her initial examination of Veyla. He followed the doctor into the office, feeling suddenly cold despite the room's warm temperature. Inside was Veyla sitting on an exam table, looking pale and withdrawn, as if even this space hadn't been able to offer much comfort amidst her turmoil. The royal physician approached them with a serious expression etched onto her face. She looked directly at Cole. "Lieutenant Reyes, I need you present for something important." Cole nodded grimly in response before she continued, addressing Veyla alone. "Your Highness, Doctor," Ilera said gently but firmly, "you must tell him." Veyla shook her head slowly from side to side, a small shiver running through her slender frame despite the room's warmth. She couldn't look at Cole directly, as he watched with growing unease and confusion. "I cannot," she whispered in response, more to herself than anyone else present. "Your Highness, Doctor," Ilera repeated with increasing urgency, "Lieutenant Reyes needs to know what has happened." Veyla's lips trembled slightly, but remained sealed tight against any further admission of her distress. The doctor sighed heavily before turning fully towards Cole now and explaining more directly. "Lieutenant, are you familiar with Vel'Kari imprinting?" Cole shook his head, not sure if he should feel offended by the assumption that such knowledge would already be common among him, or merely bewildered by this new term. "I am not," Cole admitted frankly. "Doctor." Ilera nodded once and then explained patiently, "When a Vel'Kari's life is saved through combat, genuine mortal peril, genuine rescue, it triggers a biological response, an imprint." Cole's mind stopped processing the information for a moment as he tried to piece together what exactly this meant in relation to his actions and Veyla. "Imprint?" he echoed. The doctor nodded solemnly. "It creates an overwhelming need to stay near the savior. The body is assessing whether this person, this proven protector, might be suitable for a deeper bond." Cole processed that information slowly. His eyes then shifted towards Veyla, who was still watching him, but not meeting his gaze fully. "How long does it last?" Cole asked finally, his voice low and strained with effort to comprehend such an alien concept from another species entirely different from humanity's ways of dealing with survival instincts or romantic attachments. The doctor hesitated slightly before answering honestly, "Until one of two things happens. Either the imprinted person determines the savior is unsuitable, incompatibly the imprint fades, or the imprint deepens into a permanent bond." Cole stared at Veyla, trying to understand why her earlier words about needing him nearby made such sense now. "And if neither happens?" Cole asked further, his voice tinged with worry not only for himself, but also for what she must be enduring physically and mentally given this revelation. The doctor was quiet before answering. "Then it becomes increasingly distressing for the imprinted party. The need grows. The inability to satisfy it causes significant psychological harm." Veyla finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, as if admitting something painful yet necessary. "You can reject the bond formally. If you tell me you want nothing to do with me, my biology will eventually accept that you are unsuitable." She still wouldn't look at him. "I would not blame you," she continued softly, but firmly now, after swallowing hard against those words, speaking them like they were a weight lifted even as another burden seemed to settle in its place. "This is not your problem." Cole looked at this princess who had followed him. Cole watched Veyla's fragile demeanor, her eyes downcast and shoulders hunched in a way that screamed of distress he could barely understand, yet desperately wanted to alleviate. Dr. Ilera's explanation had shattered something inside him, a notion of reality replaced by an intricate dance between biology and destiny. He took a step closer to the princess as she continued speaking, but still refused eye contact. "I would not blame you," Veyla repeated softly, her voice trembling slightly despite her attempts at composure. "This is not your problem." Cole's heart ached for this regal woman who had suddenly lost control over herself and was now burdened by an alien biological response that left him both confused and oddly compelled to help her. "You don't need to say it," he said gently, trying his best to convey reassurance through words alone. "I'm here." Veyla's shoulders tensed as if she wanted to pull away from the offer of support, but could not bring herself to do so fully. She glanced at him briefly before averting her eyes once again. "You cannot mean that," Veyla murmured, her voice barely audible over the quiet hum of medical equipment around them. "You do not even know me." Cole felt a wave of frustration and pity wash through him. He didn't need to understand every intricate detail of Vel'Kari biology. All he needed was clarity on how best to help Veyla. "I know you have been miserable for 3 weeks because of something you cannot control," Cole replied, his tone steady, as if grounding himself in the reality of their situation more than her feelings. "I know you offered me an out instead of demanding I stay." She looked up at him now with wide, violet eyes filled with a mixture of fear and gratitude, a stark contrast to her usual composed demeanor. "I am trying," she whispered desperately, tears forming in those beautiful eyes that now seemed so vulnerable rather than regal. "I keep finding myself wherever you are because my body wants me close, but I cannot force this on anyone." Cole stepped forward, placing a hand gently on the edge of the exam table next to where Veyla sat. He could feel her body tense up again under his touch, but he ignored it in favor of meeting her gaze fully. "I know you are embarrassed by needing anyone," Cole said softly yet resolutely. "I know you hate that your body made this choice without asking." Veyla's shoulders began to shake slightly as tears slipped down her pale cheeks unbidden. She looked at him with a mix of desperation and embarrassment for being so dependent on someone who had no reason to care back. "This is not fair to you," she sobbed, shaking her head weakly. "The imprint is not love. It is biology." Cole sighed heavily before responding calmly. "Are you? Because from where I am standing, you have spent 3 weeks fighting this, trying to give me space, offering to let me reject you." He stepped closer now and took a breath. "That does not sound like forcing." Her tears flowed more freely as she stared at him in disbelief. She wanted nothing more than for this all to be over, but knew the only way was through accepting something her body would never allow. "I am essentially forcing you," Veyla whispered, her voice breaking with each word spoken now. Cole shook his head firmly and reached out slowly to take one of her hand's thighs, being their first deliberate contact since she had been imprinted. He held it gently but firmly, as if offering both comfort and reassurance in equal measure. "If your biology needs time to evaluate me, then let it evaluate," he said calmly, meeting Veyla's tearful eyes with unwavering resolve of his own now visible there. "I am not going anywhere." Veyla stared at him for several moments before her breath caught, and she whispered in a trembling voice, "What if you are not suitable? What if after all this my imprint rejects you?" Cole shrugged as best he could while still holding onto Veyla's hand, trying to convey nonchalance, even though inside he felt anything but. The idea of rejection stung deeply despite his attempt at appearing unaffected. "Then at least we tried," Cole replied honestly, "and you will know for certain instead of wondering." She searched his face intently, looking beyond the human soldier in front of her and into whatever it was that had drawn him closer to her over these past few weeks, regardless of logic or biological response. "Why would you do this?" Veyla asked finally, a small amount of hope creeping back into her voice despite all fears still lingering there as well. Cole thought about the moments when she looked at him with an unguarded expression, moments that had become fewer, but more meaningful since she'd first been imprinted. Relief in knowing he hadn't abandoned her despite being given 2 months had passed since Lieutenant Cole Reyes saved Princess Veyla of Vel'Kari's life, and their relationship was evolving in ways that neither of them could have anticipated. The desperate following had ceased, the imprint had settled, but it left behind a new kind of connection built on mutual understanding and genuine affection. One evening, as the stars shone brightly over the observation deck, where Cole often found solace after long days of duty, Veyla approached him quietly. She could sense something was amiss in his demeanor. His usually sharp gaze now had an air of introspection, had unsettled her. He was lost in thought, standing at the railing and looking out into the vast expanse of space. "Something is troubling you," she said softly, hesitating before stepping closer to stand beside him. Cole turned to look at Veyla, his eyes reflecting a mix of determination and self-doubt. "The imprint has settled," he replied after a moment's pause. "You can function without me now." Veyla nodded slowly, understanding the unspoken weight in Cole's words. She had been trying to navigate this new reality with as much grace as possible, but even she couldn't deny that her heart was still heavily entangled in their unexpected bond. "But I do not want to," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. The admission caught him off guard, and he turned fully towards her now, his expression softening at the sincerity in her eyes. He nodded silently, processing this new information, as if trying to find the right words amidst the myriad of thoughts swirling inside his mind. She continued gently. "Krath was wrong," Veyla said firmly. "The imprint opened a door. It did not create what walked through." Cole's gaze met hers with increasing curiosity and hope now, waiting for her explanation. "It started because my biology demanded it," she explained softly. "But these past 2 months have shown me who you are: patient, kind." She paused to collect herself before listing the qualities that had gradually come into focus over time. "You never made me feel ashamed of this imprint, and let me fight it without making me feel weak for failing." Cole's heart swelled at her words, realizing how deeply she saw him now beyond just his duty or role. She looked directly at Cole. "The imprint said you might be suitable. These 2 months proved you are." He took a step closer to place both hands on the railing next to hers, and leaned in slightly so that their faces were mere inches apart. His touch was gentle yet firmer reassurance she needed now more than ever. Veyla continued. "It started as biology, but it became choice for me." She traced her fingers along his jawline softly before bringing one hand up to rest against the side of his face tenderly. "I love you, Cole," she admitted finally, those 3 words carrying an immense weight in their simplicity yet depth. "Not because my body wanted me to." Cole's expression softened further as he gazed deeply into her eyes, seeing the genuine affection and resolve there that spoke volumes beyond mere biological compulsion. He cupped his hand around hers, still resting on his face, holding it gently against him before bringing it up to press a kiss upon Veyla's palm. "I was supposed to be evaluating you," he admitted quietly, making sure this wasn't just biology talking. Veyla's lips curved into a small but genuine smile as she leaned in towards Cole now fully. "And what did you decide?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his face for confirmation. Cole didn't hesitate before responding with conviction that even if it started as biology, it became choice. "Mine too." She melted into him, then embracing Cole tightly and resting her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear as they held each other close under the stars. Their bond had started amidst violence and survival, but continued to flourish in a space of mutual respect and genuine affection on that neither biology nor circumstance could fully explain. It was now their truth, one shared willingly with hearts open, not just bodies bound by an alien imprint.